All right, so today I'm going to be talking about one of our final authors for this semester, which is Dylan Thomas. He was born in Wales, Swansea, South Wales, in October of 1914 to David John Thomas, who was an English master at Swansea Grammar School, and his wife, Florence Thomas, who was a seamstress. Uh, Thomas is the best known or most well known Welsh poet of all time, but his works are written only in Anglo English, right? So, but he was fluent in Welsh. But his parents were both fluent Welsh speakers, but he was not brought up to be necessarily bilingual. And then there was a kind of a general decline in the Welsh language during the 19th century. And so they were not speaking it as much. They were speaking more English than Welsh. Okay, so he was middle class background, grown up very rural. He took holidays. He lived in an affluent area of the city. And those are a lot of his poems kind of draw from his childhood experiences in the Welsh countryside. He started a notebook when he was 15, and while he was in grammar school, and he kept a lot of his first collections, first and second collection, 18 poems and 25 poems, were pretty much straight from those in that notebook that he kept when he was a kid. It says nearly 2/3 of his poetic works were written while he was still a teenager. He worked as a reporter for the South Wales Daily Post when he was 16, and then left the newspaper to kind of concentrate more on his poetry. Kind of worked as a freelance journalist when they needed him to do that. He joined the theater company in Swansea, the Swansea Little Theater Company, and kind of began to frequent pubs and cafes in Swansea, Wales, and they became known, him and his little group of friends that he ran around with. There was the Cardamom Gang. One of their favorite cafes was the Cardamom Cafe, and so they gathered there and did poetry readings and things like that. This time period in his life was very productive for him. At age 18, the first of his poems to be published outside of Wales, and Death Shall Have No Dominion, was published in the New England Weekly. And so Thomas moves to London. He leaves Wales, moves to London to pursue his literary success. Published 18 poems in December of 1934. And then he began to started attracting attention from bigger names like T.S. Eliot and Edith Sitwell. He met his wife, Caitlin McNamara, in 1936 in a pub. All good relationships start like that, huh? They had a passionate affair, got married in 1937, which was not something that his parents wanted for him. It was against their wishes that they eloped and got married. And they were kind of like nomads. They moved from place to place, London, back to Wales, to Oxford. They went to Ireland, Italy, eventually settled in Llangorren, which is in Wales. In 1938, they had 3 children. They had a very tumultuous relationship. They had both had very fiery tempers. They both fooled around a good bit. And they loved to drink, and so that combination was like the perfect trifecta for a tumultuous relationship. Caitlin even wrote about it in some memoirs that were published after she died that talk about their relationship. Dylan referred to their union as raw, red, bleeding meat, which is what you want to describe your relationship as. They stayed together, however, until Dylan died. Thomas died in 1953. His popularity really kind of stemmed from his story, his poems about Wales, his lyrical prose. He portrayed an image of Welshness that many Welsh men and women kind of held in their hearts. He did not focus on bleakness of the modern period. The Industrial Depression is the time period. He did not do that in his poetry. Kind of had a lot of romantic kind of throwback in a lot of his the beauty of nature, that kind of thing. Okay, so the beginning of World War II, his health kind of started declining. He had suffered from bronchitis and asthma since he was a child. He was not able to go to World War II because of his medical condition. So he moved into script writing. He wrote films for the Ministry of Information. They were like propaganda films for film pictures and for radio, and he would perform them. And his voice, that was like the big thing about him. His voice and his he used accents when he spoke, and it made him very popular, a very popular speaker, particularly in America. And he gained a reputation as a heavy drinker, which we kind of already touched on. He was kind of really drawn to Byron and Keats, tragic romantic poets. And they had this lifestyle that was just very, they kind of fed into that. When he was in New York, he was promoting under Milkwood in winter of 1953. He fell ill, had to cancel several engagements. His doctor came to see him a couple of times, but his condition deteriorated, and morphine injections that were administered in error by the doctor left him struggling to breathe. So he went to the emergency room. By the time he got there, was blue and had slipped into a coma. The doctors diagnosed a severe case of bronchitis, and an x-ray confirmed that he was also suffering from pneumonia. The infection worsened, and on November the 9th of 1953, he died after he never regained consciousness from his coma. So after his death, the years that followed, his lifestyle prompted people to speculate that he'd actually drunk himself to death. But his post-mortem showed very little sign of cirrhosis of the liver, which would have been associated with alcohol-related deaths. He's still one of Wales' most celebrated sons, regardless of his relationship and alcohol and all that good stuff. It's not been able to outshadow his literary achievements. All right, the point we're going to be talking about today is "And Death Shall Have No Dominion." 3 stanzas, written and published in May of 1933 in the New England Weekly. No unifying rhyme scheme, but it does have a use of a refrain, and it does use lyrical language. It's clear that he wrote this as an homage to the end of Romanticism, the era of Romanticism, in which these elements, the use of the refrain, the lyrical use of language, was in peak use. The title comes from Romans in the New Testament. It is used in reference to the resurrection of Christ and the lack of control that death really has. And really the poem itself is just kind of a look at the ways in which death controls mankind, and the fact that even though it is really powerful, it cannot control everything. Mankind has the power to stand up against the evils of death, and it does not divide, but brings together all those that lived. Um, so let's look at it stanza by stanza. So the first stanza, and death shall have no dominion. Dead men naked, they shall be one with the man in the wind and the west moon. When their bones are picked clean and the clean bones gone, they shall have stars at elbow and foot. Though they go mad, they shall be sane. Though they sink through the sea, they shall rise again. Though lovers be lost, love shall not, and death shall have no dominion. So first repetition of the title line at the first and the end, and death shall have no dominion, and again the refrain at the end. It appears, that same refrain appears at the beginning and end of each stanza, and it is the title of our story. So it's really kind of an important phrase. And it asserts that death is not all powerful as it is sometimes made out to be. So then the second line we have there, it kind of presents one of the way, or some of the ways that death is not all powerful. Dead men naked, they shall be one. Death brings every man together, all men from all walks of life. It doesn't matter if you're rich or poor or whatever. Every man is the same in death. It does not divide men as they die. The man in the wind and the man in the west moon that we have there, when their bones are picked clean and the clean bones gone, they shall have stars at elbow and foot. Even when it has taken a man, cleaned his bones, and destroyed the clean bones, it still does not have total control. They will all be together in the next world, whatever that may be, and united in their new common state. Though they go mad, they shall be sane. Though they sink through the sea, they shall rise again. Though lovers be lost, shall not. Love shall not. So you have three of those statements back to back. The first is contrasting. Even when they're mad, they're actually sane because they will experience the same world. The second though statement is another clear reference to death, and this is to the resurrection. Men will sink through the sea and they shall rise again. And then the final though statement has to do with emotional death. Even though death may bring an end to love, like specific love, it cannot end love in its entirety. It still will go on. And death shall have no dominion. Okay? Second stanza, and death shall have no dominion under the windings of the sea. They lying long shall not die windily, twisting on racks when sinews give way, strapped to a wheel, yet they shall not break. Faith in their hands shall snap in two, and the unicorn evils run them through. Split all ends up, they shan't crack, and death shall have no dominion. So we have another repetition of the refrain, another reference to the sea, the winding sea. And the water, the layers of water twisting around one another, and within the water are those lying long. The bodies of dead men are stretched out under the water and appear long in a limb. They are said to not have died windily. They did not have long drawn out deaths, but met it perhaps in an instant. You have the fourth line, which introduces another way to meet death that is much more painful through torture and agony. Twisting on racks when sinews give way, strapped to a wheel. This is a reference to medieval torture devices. And even though these men's lives are ending horribly, they do not break. Maybe physically with broken bones or whatever, but they cannot be broken fully. And then their faith may in their hands snap in two, and the unicorn evils of the world may run them through, but they will not break. They are having their faith taken from them and meeting every kind of evil, but still they are strong, and death does not take everything from them. Let's stop here and we'll finish up with stanza 3 in the next screencast.